AskReddit by Toby asked 2003. What's the most Nsfw experience you witnessed right in front of your eyes? I watched a man fall when his rappelling gear failed. He fell about 100 feet, and the sound his body made when he hit will haunt me forever. He broke his spine, pelvis, both legs, one arm, and an orbital bone, but he survived. There were a lot of people around to give first aid, and I helped carry him out of the canyon to the ambulance, and I swear I thought he was dead already. He looked like thawed hamburger meat. The rangers? Park police, not sure what they were, took our info, and a few days later, to our surprise, the guy was alive and wanted to see the people who carried him out. He gave us all some really nice leather backpacks from the company he worked for. I still have it some 20+ years later. Edit update. The guy was in the hospital for many weeks, but after a very long rehab he made a nearly full recovery. That was mostly due to him being in really good physical shape before the accident. Abu Ayat for life would like you to drop that brand name. Growing up in Kenya, I would witness thieves getting beaten up then burnt alive. I have experienced more than 8 of them, the first one when I was like 5 years old. I can still smell the burning corpses. A fentanyl overdose. Was a younger woman, couldn't have been older than 23 or 24. Thankfully, I and someone else nearby both called 911, and the paramedics showed up in time to resuscitate her. She lunged at one of the paramedics after regaining consciousness, then ran off. Her cousin witnessed the whole thing, and it was pretty obvious it fucked him up pretty bad. Ended up buying the poor guy breakfast, and the whole time he was more or less in shock, saying how she was like a little sister to him. This wasn't the person he knew. She'd never do something like this. If you don't get a noting person's respiratory system working before administering Narcan, they tend to come to rather violently. When they wake up it puts them into fight or flight because they were just asphyxiated. A coworker, just before quitting, took a shit in their cubicle. They wanted to have him charged with indecent exposure, but since no one saw him, besides me, and I wasn't admitting to having seen it, they dropped it. They also tried to use the defecating in public laws, but the police pointed out that their office was in fact private, not a public space. The man became a legend around the office. This feels like a logistical nightmare, but I respect the energy. I lived in Vegas and took some friends of my brother-in-law, whom I had never met, to my warehouse at the Speedway. One guy hit a joint one time and went into an instant manic episode like I didn't know was possible. He instantly pulled his pants and underwear off, pounded his underwear into my chest saying, "I want you to have these and keep them forever." Then proceeded to try to push over pallet racks. He turned blood red and was sweating profusely, so we gave him a bottle of water. He poured it over his head and then began to swim butt naked down the aisle. This went on for about an hour before the paramedics showed up. One of the weirdest things about it was his identical twin brother was there standing next to him the whole time saying he does this sometimes, but I've never seen him naked before. There are so many more bizarre details, it felt like a bad trip. Driving home in a snowstorm and a BMW passes me like I'm parked. They get about a mile ahead of me and I see the tail lights swerving, then I see headlights, tail lights as the car spins round and round. Then it starts rolling. I hit my hazards and come to a stop. I get up to the car and it's empty. I look and about 50 feet is someone on the ground. I get up to her. She is on her back and her neck is clearly broken, at a very unnatural position. But her waist is twisted 180 degrees and her toes facing down. She obviously dead. A man ran up and tried to convince me that we needed to start CPR. 2 others had to explain to him it was too late. Every time I drive through there I see her face. Guy I knew was driving in snow, and it was one of those days where it was snowing actively and the plows hadn't gotten the roads cleared yet and people were sliding off the road left and right. Someone who had drifted off the side of the road ahead of him was out of his vehicle and walked behind it, and he ended up drifting off the same direction as that car and slowly watched as his car hit and pinned the guy in front of him. He said he honked, but the guy didn't seem like he heard, and nothing he could do would change the direction his car was going. He was pretty traumatized from the event. The guy ended up dying. He didn't get in trouble legally from it, but I can only imagine his mental anguish having to relive that in slow motion over and over again and watching someone die right in front of you. Going back to my apartment after college classes ended. Homeless people fucking right outside my apartment complex by a tree. I try not to make eye contact. Hey, you want to join? No thanks. Have a good night. How considerate of them. My faith in humanity is restored. Watched my mom at 11 take care of a man whose truck had rolled over him twice before being launched out of the pickup. For the next 1-2 hour while waiting for paramedics, she held his head, consoling him and monitoring his vitals as much as she could. After the medics, she got in the passenger seat as parts of her arms were covered in blood. That day I looked at her as a hero, more than a mom. I went to Rainbow Gathering a few years ago. There were various camps with their own themes. Some places made coffee, some were art camps, there was one Bread of Life, a Christian kitchen, and just around the bend was the Ludus Temple. They were a bunch of crust punks that were into putting on quite a show. I was walking through all the camps and heard some folk bluegrass music playing. It caught my attention, so I decided to check it out. Oh man, wish I hadn't. They had a guy in the mud getting spit roasted by 2 girls with strap-ons, while a full band was playing Wagon Wheel in front of full audience. I almost forgot about that. Edit, typos. I wasn't there for this, but my co-workers were at a lunch and a woman pulled out her boob and squirted milk at a very high-ranking employee across the table. Power move. A co-worker at a factory got a set of shop shears caught in an extrusion puller. https://ams-plastisextrusions.com/collections/pullers closed bracket link is Nsfw. Just a page for a manufacturer of said equipment that has pictures of the gears so you can see what it does. The shears got tangled in a strip of plastic that had got wrapped around the belt, and when the shears rounded the turn with his fingers stuck in them, it basically ripped his hand in half, nearly twisting his thumb, middle finger, and forefinger off. All because he thought he could clear a jam tangle without having to stop and restart the line. Saving 15 minutes cost him a functioning hand. Oh no. When was like 9, me and some ice hockey butts saw a dude split his head wide open on an ice rink, and then some inexperienced skaters trip over him and hurt themselves. Yeah, my story involves hockey as well. Guy in my men's league last year took a soft saucer pass right to the teeth. Wasn't wearing a cage or visor either. He got up and immediately yelled, "I just lost all my fucking teeth." His top 2 front teeth were just nubs and his bottom 2 were caved in at a 45-degree angle. The surrounding teeth were all chipped and fucked up. In the end he lost 10 teeth, had some stitches in his mouth and a broken jaw. This came from a light pass, not even a shot. Next game our entire team has cages on. In a club in Berlin, Germany. It was quite sex positive. A woman in her 30s sat down next to me on a weird chair and we started chatting. At some point during the conversation a man kneeled down in front of her and started to fist her, consensually. She didn't break eye contact. She didn't even flinch. She just continued the conversation like normal. I had no idea how to deal with that and didn't want to be rude, so we continued the conversation and I tried to ignore the man who had half his arm in her vagina. You were speaking to a very sophisticated hand puppet. Walked in on 2 co-workers having an affair. He later cornered me and threatened me. She is my brother-in-law's best friend's wife, and I've known him a lot longer than she has. I reported it, mainly the threat, to HR and talked to my sister about it to see if she and her husband wanted to talk to him about it. I got written up by the VP and the conduct team of where I work because I told my sister about it. Allegedly I put the woman at risk because, and I quote conduct, her husband is most likely going to beat her over this. I've known him for over 30 years. He doesn't have a violent bone in his body, and if he showed any signs, he wouldn't still be good friends with my sister and her husband. A few years later, did he ever beat her? Nope. Did they go to counseling? Yes. That is retaliation and illegal in the US. Ran into a burning house as a teenager. It was an old couple just a few houses down from mine. Got through the living room, into the dining area, but smoke started getting bad. Got down on my knees and crawled to the hallway to look into the bedrooms. The couple were dead, in bed, burning. I know this by the shape of the lumps, not because they were recognizable. I learned 2 things. 1. Don't ever run into a burning house. It's dumb. I got lucky. 2. The smell of burning humans is something you never forget. My mother killed herself by setting herself on fire, and I didn't see it happen, but I saw the aftermath. You're right, you never forget the smell. Driving Uber, I caught a dude jerking off in my car. Turned around and he had his dick in one hand and his phone in the other hand recording it. It kind of stunned me at how bold he was. I kicked him out and still charged him for the entire ride. This was one of the reasons I bought a dual facing dashcam. You should have charged him a cleaning fee. Think of the lengths he'd have had to go to prove he didn't make one. IDK Giant Eagle is a grocery store you can find across all of the US, but I was doing some grocery shopping on my lunch break and a guy came into the store with a gun, apparently intending to kill one of the cashiers. Later found out it was the guy's ex-GF, and then himself, but he ended up shooting himself in the head. I just happened to be 2 checkout lanes away from him when it happened. Edit. I can link the story if anyone is interested. Sadly nothing much came from it though. Was that in Brunswick, Ohio, or has that happened in more than one Giant Eagle? The aftermath of a deadly shooting in Montreal's Chinatown. We heard a few pops, a couple screams, turned the corner, and the guy's laying right there on the sidewalk with one in his head. No clue what happened to the shooter. Police arrived 30 seconds later. Yikes, when was this? I used to spend a lot of time around there. Worked at an aluminum plant. One of the mills was down for a few days. I went to the pulpit to sleep and chill since I didn't have shit to do. Walk in and 2 of my co-workers, both men, both very much married, banging away. I just turned around and left. The rest of the time I worked with them was awkward for sure. Deleted. I was in a train compartment sitting by a window. It was broad daylight. There were 2 young students, boy and girl. Suddenly the girl opened the guy's fly and started to jack him off. I did not know how to react, as nothing like that happened to me before. Also they blocked my way to the corridor. They did not even close the curtains, so the conductor girl passing by saw them too, and apparently did not know how to react as well. Then they got off on the very next stop. I think they did not have a ticket. Deleted. I worked the night shift and had just returned home around 4:30 am and went to check the mail. My GF and I round the corner and see a girl bent over on top of a car getting railed by a guy. We immediately turn around and walk to my door, but then have second thoughts to turn around and check if she's okay and not being attacked or anything. Turns out she is a co-worker and she was definitely very okay with what was going on. Lol, in my mind y'all made eye contact and she noticed your worried gaze, so she gives you a thumbs up and you do the same and walk away whistling. Driving on an interstate highway about 75 miles per hour when I see the car in the left lane start to drive a little erratically. As I passed the car on the right, I saw what looked like the male passenger finger banging the woman driving, who looked like she was having an orgasm. I quickly got away from them to avoid an accident. Edit. For all those who are asking, This happened in New York State around 2010. The only thing I can say about the couple was it looked like they were in their late 50s or early 60s. When a friend's brother moved to Ohio, he was carpooling with his co-workers and one nudged him to look over at the car next to him. The driver was a woman naked DJing it up. Watched a grown man pull a mobile phone out of his ass. It's for you. I was on holiday with my wife in the Canary Islands. We were on the beach all day and we made the mistake of taking a shortcut through the sand dunes. It was a hot, sweaty and tiring walk and surprisingly long walk. Then we wandered into a porn shoot. To lie, the young ladies getting it on. Full XXX rated content. Nobody batted an eyelid except to motion us around the back of the camera to keep us out of view. So we just kept on walking to the hotels. Very surreal. Technically that was Nsfw since they were working. Nature was calling. So I stopped at a McDonald's in an unfamiliar neighborhood. I walk in and ask about the bathroom. Without any words they point towards the bathroom. I enter the bathroom and am directly facing the side of the disability stall. On the missing bottom section of the stall you can clearly see two men fucking the shit out of each other, accompanied by their yells of pleasure and skin slapping. I nope the fuck out of there, but as I walk back down the hall to the bathroom, a huge security guard bumps into me and asks if I've seen two men. I point and say they are in there fucking. He shoves past me, walks quickly to the bathroom. I run out of that McDonald's and have to settle for the gas station across the street. All these stories of surprise gay sex. Am I supposed to have run into this by now? Work colleague was using the cardboard compactor. Compactor jammed, so the Muppet climbed into the still powered on compactor and started jumping and stamping on the cardboard sticking out. Super Nsfw. And he's lucky he was noticed before anything terrible happened. My boss climbed into a green cardboard baler, the kind where you put the wire through and twist it, and the front opens for the bale to fall out, while it was running. It was going up when he climbed in, but I saw him on the top, under the blade, with the machine whirring, so I sprinted over and pulled the lockout box lever, and accidentally kicked off a hydraulics line. He yelled at me and wanted to write me up, and in my first time yelling back at a boss,